Peter Drucker said it best when he said the best way to predict the future was to create it. Now, we all know that predictions around the future of the mainframe have not been particularly accurate, and in fact, some have been, well, they've been terrible, including perhaps the most infamous quote by Stuart Alsop that we all know, when he predicted that the last mainframe would be unplugged on March 15th, 1996. Nice, it was a very precise prediction. It was actually only 1 year later that Robert Cringely, the author of Accidental Empires, in response to the fears around Y2K, made his own prediction. And he said on December 31st, 1999, when the ball drops in Times Square and people are kissing, the era of the mainframe computing will be over. It's a good thing both these guys don't pick stocks for a living, because it would be particularly challenging for them. But what was actually accurate was the call on Y2K. It was just exactly opposite. Instead of Y2K marking the death of the mainframe, Y2K marked the renaissance of the mainframe. And from 2000 to 2008, the MIPS in the marketplace, a measure of capacity, grew by over 300%, or 20% a year in compound annual growth rate. IBM's market share, which had hit a low of 17%, rebounded back to 31% over that same period of time. And the question, of course, was, what drove that growth? Well, we all know what the answer was, Greg. IBM innovation drove that growth. Opening up the platform to Linux, opening up the platform, building specialty processors to bring on new workloads with zips, zaps, IFLs. The entire ecosystem rallying around the platform and driving new innovation. Today, 80% of the Fortune 500 companies in the world still run mission-critical applications on the mainframe, and it's estimated that over 80% of the transactions in insurance, banking, healthcare, and government around the world still run on the mainframe. So with all of that good news, people always say, well, Dayton, the slide ends at 2008. What happened after that? Well, we all know what happened after that. An extraordinarily global recession happened after that. And spending around the world for all of IT slowed down dramatically over that period of time, including the mainframe. MIPS slowed down dramatically. The growth slowed dramatically in 2009 and in 2010. But of course, as the saying goes, it's always darkest before the dawn. And in the second half of 2010, MIPS in Q3 came rocketing back 54%, and in Q4 came rocketing back 58%. Bob Thomas, the editor of Mainframe Executive Magazine and Z Journal, has made his own bold prediction about the future that he's so confident about, he put it up on a t-shirt for all the world to see. And I think it actually nicely sums up the state of the union for the mainframe. And for the folks online, and for those of you for whom it may not translate, I made the mistake of saying this out loud once, and the correct interpretation is, dead my donkey, long live the mainframe. But I think this is, and Bob and the publication is down in Texas, and I think this is the Texas way of saying that the mainframe state of the union is strong, and we're excited about that. So with all of that, the big news, of course, is Z Enterprise. This is what has everybody so excited. And what's great is 30 years ago, distributed computing broke the mainframe up into pieces, and for the past 30 years has been unsuccessfully trying to put those pieces back together again to achieve the same qualities of service, scalability, security, reliability of the mainframe. And as we heard on September 10th in 2010, IBM made the world right again. By launching the Z Enterprise and by extending those qualities of service back onto the distributed architecture with the Z196 and the extension of the ZBX infrastructure, now known as the system of systems, the data center or cloud in a box, fit for purpose workloads. Let's take a brief look at the investment and the results. $1.5 billion 3 years of co-development with customers, a new integrated architecture, smoking fast 5.2 gigahertz superscalar processor, 60% more capacity, 60% faster than the Z10. An absolutely extraordinary achievement by IBM. And actually, we were so excited about it that we bought one. And here's ours. Here's our development team. When this thing came into the shop, it was hysterical. People came racing down to get their holiday card pictures taken in front of this. And this is what, and these are the things that shipped out. So there's a lot of enthusiasm. There's a lot of enthusiasm around this. And I know many of you, I've heard the numbers approaching close to 500. Many of you have done rapid adoption of the Z196, which is wonderful. And many of you have bought the ZBX Complex as well. And we've done the same. And we're actively developing on both to ensure that the future remains bright. So speaking of the future, what about the future? This is right now. We always ask customers, what are they thinking about the future? What are their intentions? Where are we going? And so we recently did a survey asking folks, how important is the mainframe to your IT organization strategy going forward? And 85% said it was important or very important overall, which is wonderful. Of course, there's a lot of buzz and enthusiasm going on around the cloud right now. And what's the cloud going to do? And what's the impact of the cloud on the mainframe? And so we surveyed US and we surveyed Europe. And we asked, how important is the mainframe going to be to your cloud strategy? 73% in the US said it was going to be important, and 79% in Europe said the mainframe was going to be important to their cloud strategy. How can that be? How can that be? When you take a look at what are the things that have everybody so excited about cloud computing, what are the attributes? Scalability, virtualization, elasticity on demand, rapid provisioning, SLA management, chargeback and billing. Do these things sound familiar? Of course they do. Of course they do. Many of you have come up to me and said, hey, this is back to the future. We've been doing this for 40 years. It just wasn't called cloud computing. It was called a service bureau, where we leased processing power and applications. And IBM, didn't IBM last year just launch the largest analytics cloud in the world, consolidating down, I think it was about 3,000 servers onto 15 Z10s. I'm sure that's going to be 7 or 8 Z196s, serving up 100,000 transactions per minute to over 300,000 employees. Does anybody think something like that could happen on anything other than a mainframe? So what we do know is that the state of the union is strong, and that when we take a look at the future of the mainframe, the future looks bright, whether it's in your general IT strategy or whether it has to do with cloud computing, and that's wonderful. But also, the fact of the matter is, and it's no secret, that there are still challenges that remain around the mainframe. And there are 3 big ones we're going to review here today. The first is around cost. It's around doing more with less. The second is around sustaining critical skills. And the third is around increasing agility of the platform. And let's take a look at each one of them here briefly. First, control costs. It has become such a cliche to talk about doing more with less, to the point where at a recent presentation I gave to a CIO of a large bank associated with the military, at the beginning of the presentation, the CIO looked at me and a group of people from across the room and said, "You better not put up a slide today that says, do more with less." You cannot imagine the horror that I felt knowing that in the laptop loaded at the front of the room with my presentation in it was in fact a slide that said, do more with less. And when that dreaded moment came and it said, jumped up, do more with less, he jumped up and said, do more with less? That would be a luxury. I have to do more with nothing. And I thought, wow, do more with nothing. Now that's a challenge. But I think in his heart, what he meant was that he had to do more, at least with nothing new, and to make sure he took advantage of everything that he had. We did a survey also. We had an event a couple of weeks ago, and we surveyed a few hundred mainframe customers from across the country, and we asked them what was their number one initiative for 2011. Gave them a variety of answers. The number one response, overwhelming by 75%, was do more with less. So the point here is this issue is real, it is now, and it is something that all of us as members of the ecosystem have got to address. Next, let's talk about sustaining critical skills. This is a debate that is raging and continues to rage. I think Donald Tapscott stood up here a year ago and showed a beautiful picture of the demographics of the U.S. labor force, and there was a huge bubble in there, and it was the Gen Xers moving through the population. I'm sorry, it was the baby boomers moving through the population, moving into retirement. The baby boomers, pioneers of IT, pioneers of the mainframe, leaving with 30 years of knowledge in their head and walking out the door. I talk to customers around the world about this topic, and everybody has these issues. Everybody is grappling with it. There's a lot of resources out there, but everybody is grappling with this topic.